we're going to be talking about cryptography today. Um, and a little bit in introduction, this is just what I was talking about. I like gymnastics and hanging out with my friends. And this is part two of my cryptography series. And in part three, which will be next week, we're going to be going over cyber threats and the future of cyber. And if anybody missed the first session, I do have a recording up on my website, which I can send the link to as well for easy access. So I'll just do that now. So one second, let me just send it. Okay. And if you click on that, it should prompt you like it should say like go to recordings, so that'll take you there. And all these sessions will be recorded, so if you miss anything or you want to go back, then you can always go back and watch it later. And yeah. Okay, so now let's begin with cryptography. So before I begin, I also did this last time. What do you guys think cryptography is, or what do you think it means? So you can go ahead and put it in the chat. And remember, there are no right or wrong answers. And if you don't know, you can always just give your best guess. And also, just to like have some more engagement, I'll be kind of keeping track of like who's answering the questions, just give them a little shout out. And just remember, this is like a safe space, so no one's gonna judge you for what you do or do not know. Okay, if you guys don't know, that's okay. But yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, exactly. It's about, and we're gonna be getting into like all the details here. It's very interesting. So yeah, everything that you guys are saying is all correct. So very good job, guys. Okay, so let's kind of start with the definition. What is cryptography? In short, the Latin definition for cryptography means hidden message, meaning that cryptography is the science of hidden messages. But in a longer form, cryptography is the practice of converting readable information, also known as plain text, into an unreadable format known as ciphertext, using algorithms and keys. And for anyone who felt that the last session was a little bit easier, you're in luck because cryptography is a little more complicated, but it's still very, very interesting. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Okay, now why is learning about cryptography important? So a lot of data is being transferred and stored online, and a majority of it is personal information or just really secret information that we wouldn't really want everybody knowing about. And if an unauthorized individual or party has access to this information, it could cause all sorts of problems. And we went over in the last webinar how this is actually an example of a data breach. And so cryptography ensures confidentiality and the authenticity of data, making it extremely important in today's society. And when it comes to protecting information from it being misused or accessed without permission, that's where cryptography comes into play. So let's kind of imagine this. Let's say Adam and Sally are texting each other like normal. However, now let's say a hacker was able to intercept their network and was able to see what they were texting about and even possibly change the messages that they were sending to one another. Now, that would be really bad, and that's why we use cryptography. Cryptography would allow Adam and Sally to encrypt their messages, which in the original message would be known as the plain text, using a cipher to create the ciphertext. And this would make sure that no hacker would actually be able to understand what Adam and Sally are talking about, except them two. So, cryptography can be split into two main parts, encryption and then decryption. And we're going to be going over right now what encryption is and how it's used. So, encryption is the process of turning information into a code using a cipher or an algorithm. So down here, you can kind of see the general process. You have your original message known as the plain text. Then this message is encrypted using a cipher. A cipher is a series of steps or rules to change the format of the text. And there are billions of ciphers out there, but in this lesson only goes through one of them, which we'll be going over later. And that just kind of really puts that into perspective. And lastly, our ending result gets us our new message or our ciphertext. So now let's talk about the difference between symmetric and asymmetric key encryption. So first things to know is that they're both forms of encryption. They're just implemented a little bit differently. So and before we even go into that, you need to know what a key is. So a key is a secret value that is used by the encryption algorithm to encrypt or decrypt the data. And this makes sure that only certain people are able to see that message. And you can kind of think of this like a mailbox, and there'll be another example later. If Adam and Sally, if they're trying to send letters to each other, the key is what would open that mailbox. So think about it. We wouldn't want somebody we don't know having access to that key because then they can see all of the letters inside that mailbox. And the cipher, on the other hand, is what changes the wording of the letter. So they can be kind of confusing to differentiate, but again, I can go over it later. And so now symmetric key encryption uses only one key. That's the difference. The same key is used to encrypt and decrypt messages. So as you can see in this diagram right here, we have the same key is used for the encryption and decryption processes. Asymmetric encryption, or also known as public key encryption, uses two different keys, on the other hand. One key is used to encrypt, and then the other key is used to decrypt. So over here we have a green one, which is known as the public key, and the blue one is like the secret key. And this allows so that way only certain people can actually view the message, but anybody can like send a message. Okay, so this is kind of confusing to visualize. I'm going to like try and put this in terms of like a real life example. So let's just say this is like John's house and he has a mailbox outside his house. And one day a mailman comes to deliver some mail for John using a key to open that mailbox. So now the mailman can open the mailbox and place the mail inside. But later on in the day, when John comes to collect his mail, he retrieves his mail from the other side of the mailbox. So, like a mailbox has two sides. So, the mailman is putting it in on one side and John's taking it out the other. And so, the mailman put it in from one end, John's getting it out from the other. And to open up the other end, John uses the exact same key. And this is exactly what symmetric key encryption is. The same key is used to both put the mail in and take the mail out, or encrypt and decrypt. And this makes it so that both the mailman and John have access to the letters inside the mailbox. And that doesn't really sound very safe, which is where asymmetric encryption actually comes into play. But before we move on, here's a question that you guys enter in the chat. What is the difference between plain text and ciphertext? Yep, exactly. Plain text is the readable information, and the ciphertext is like, it'll look like gibberish. Okay, so now let's move on. So let's go back to symmetric key encryption. Let's say we have to tell a friend or a family member who's located across the globe a piece of top secret information. How can we share that key safely without someone else stealing it? Well, the answer to that is using asymmetric encryption. So again, asymmetric encryption uses two different keys, one to encrypt, or in this case, one to put the mail inside, and another one to decrypt, or take the mail out. So again, here's a visualization. Here is John's friend, Martha, who has come to deliver him some mail. And she uses a public key, so one that all of John's friends and families have access to. And so that way they can give John all kinds of mail. Now, later in the day, let's say another one of his friends, let's call him Luke, and he comes and gives him more mail. Again, he's using the exact same colored key that Martha was using because Again, all of John's friends and families have access to the exact same key, which is known as the public key. Okay, and then later on, when John comes to collect his mail, he opens the other end of the mailbox with a private key, a key that only he has access to. So as you can see, this one's a little different, looks pink. So this makes it so that all of his friends or anybody who has access to that public key can come and give John any letter, but they can't see anything else that's inside the mailbox. Only he can. And this is a much more safer alternative to just symmetric key encryption, where one key is used. And yeah, so now you guys can put in the chat, what is the difference between symmetric and asymmetric? And so I just went over that. Yep, exactly. Monosophy got it already. Symmetric has one and asymmetric has two. That's like the main difference. And asymmetric is definitely more safer. Okay, so now this takes us to learning about HTTPS or Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. That's what it stands for. And this is basically the protocol that is used to send data between your web browser and the website that you're visiting. Um, and also, yeah, good job, Sriyan. Same thing. When you see a little like padlock in the websites that you visit, like this, or you notice that the website starts with HTTPS instead of HTTP, it means that the website is using HTTPS. Now, HTTPS is relies on two main parts. Okay, so the first part is encryption. And so we just talked about encryption, but if you use just a standard HTTP, your data is sent in as plain text. And to put this into perspective as why this could be dangerous, let's say you're sitting at a coffee shop using the coffee shop's Wi-Fi network. Anyone who can break into that network, they can intercept your password, credit card number, your search history. They can basically see everything that you're doing. Now, what HTTPS does is that it encrypts that data using public key cryptography or asymmetric encryption. It scrambles the information completely so that even if a hacker is able to intercept it, again, it just looks like gibberish to them. Now, the second part of HTTPS is authenticity. So how do you know you're actually talking or looking at a real bank website? And not like a fake look-alike one that, maybe some other hacker might have created. This is also where HTTPS comes into play. They require websites to have a certificate called an SSL/TLS certificate. And this certificate is usually given by a trusted third party, but it proves that the website actually owns the name it claims to own. Like if you're looking at Amazon.com, like that's the Amazon.com and not some fake lookalike. And you can kind of think of it like a digital passport. It confirms that the website is legit. Okay, now why is HTTPS important? It's important for three main reasons. One, your internet service provider or your ISP, and most importantly, like a hacker on a public Wi-Fi, they can see what website you're visiting, like maybe google.com, but they cannot see the specific pages. So it ensures confidentiality. Secondly, Google also penalizes websites that don't use HTTPS, and they do this by ranking them lower in search results, and which makes them harder to find. And even if you are able to find those websites, it will always prompt you with a not secure warning, so to prevent you from using that website. And lastly, and probably most importantly, HTTPS prevents hackers from altering your data. So without HTTPS, a malicious party could, inject fake ads or malware into the website you're trying to view, which can harm the device you're using. Okay, and again in the chat, what type of encryption does HTTPS use? Yeah, so the answer is asymmetric encryption. So SSL/TSL, that is the certificate that HTTPS requires actual companies and businesses to have on their web pages to confirm the authenticity of it. So that's more of a certificate. The actual encryption, so how it turns it from, random, just actual words to random gibberish, they use asymmetric encryption. Okay. Now, this is kind of an example of like a warning page that Google can give users if their connection isn't secure. And nowadays, like Google always has this, like always use secure connection. It's like a feature. It's always toggled on by default, and that will give users these warning pages if you come across a website that doesn't use HTTPS. And it's kind of hard to see here, but over here you can see here it says not secure, and it also like HTTPS is crossed out, meaning the website does not use that. Okay, now before we begin the second half, you can go ahead and say what new thing did you learn about encryption or like your favorite thing. There's no right or wrong answers, so yeah. And also just a quick reminder, if you have any questions, you can also ask. Okay, yep, perfect. Okay, so let's continue on with learning about decryption. Okay, so decryption is the second part of cryptography, and it's essentially just the opposite of encrypting a message. It is a process of turning encrypted information back into its original form using a reverse cipher. So down here is the general process. You have your ciphertext, which is a scrambled message, and then we're using a reverse cipher because we technically want to undo like the encryption. And then we're back to our original message or our plain text. Now, here is another example with Adam and Sally. Now, they're able to securely communicate through encryption. As you can see here, the original message was like hi there, and now it's just gibberish. So now, if a hacker ever did intercept their network and see what they're talking about, they're not going to know what they're talking about. Okay, and now for our last section for this webinar, it's about learning about the Caesar cipher. So again, there are virtually an infinite amount of ciphers that exist in our world because of the infinite modifications that can happen, and the Caesar cipher is just one type. So the Caesar cipher is one of the earliest known ciphers, and it's called the Caesar cipher because Julius Caesar used this in order to protect important information during his military reigns. And if you think about it, Julius Caesar, he was like alive around 100 BC. That was around 2000 years ago. And this shows like how long ciphers have been around for and like how trying to protect information has like always been a problem. And overall, the Caesar cipher is a very simple cipher. It involves just substituting each letter in the original message with another letter, and then you get a scrambled message. And to do this, the cipher shifts each letter a certain number of letters to the right or left. It's usually right or going forward to basically get a new alphabet. So as you can kind of see here, this Caesar cipher is shifting the alphabet two characters to the right. So A is now getting corresponded to C, B is D, C is E, and D, F, and like so on and so on. And the thing is, this cipher is very easy to crack as there are only 25 possible ways to shift it. And this is why, or 26 possible ways to shift it. And this is why, like, there's much more complicated ciphers that are used today where there are billions of possibilities. So that way it's much harder to crack. Okay, so here's kind of an example of how the Caesar cipher works. We start off with our original message, which is, in this case, this is my message, and it can be anything, and this is where the key kind of comes into play. So, since the Caesar cipher involves shifting the alphabet a certain number of spaces, the key is really what tells us how many spaces it's shifting. So if a hacker was able to figure out what value that key was, they basically can unlock our new alphabet and then they can read all our messages. And that's not what we want. So, and again, technically there's 26 combinations, which really isn't a lot. And with modern technology, a computer can do this in like a couple seconds, which is obviously why it's not a very strong cipher, but is a great one to just kind of get to understand how cryptography works. So again, our key is 4, and that means our alphabet gets shifted to the right 4 times. So I kind of just showed how the word this gets encrypted. So T would be like U, V, W, and then X. That's the fourth one. So T gets turned into X. H is I, J, K, and then L, and then just kind of continue that for your entire message. And then you would get this. So again, just looks like a bunch of gibberish, doesn't really make much sense. And now here is a pretty cool Caesar cipher simulator where you can try encrypting and decrypting your own messages. And the cool part is that it allows you to see the process, exactly how it works, and even the math behind it. And yeah, so I can kind of show you guys a little step by step, walk you guys through it. Okay, wait one sec. Okay, so right here, if we put in a message like I love soccer. Here, our key is 3. And again, this ranges 125, 26 combinations. And this is our new ciphertext. And what is really cool here is you can click See Process, and it shows you exactly kind of how it works. So it says here with Shift 3, A is D, B is E, and then Z is C. And it also shows you kind of the math behind how to do it. So cryptography, especially when you start learning about, if you ever do learn about like more complex ciphers, they involve a lot of math. Cryptography is pretty math heavy. It's not the most difficult math, but it can get kind of confusing. But yeah, and then again, here is what I was talking about. It shows you like a whole new alphabet. So this is now technically your A, this is your B, your C, so on. And it shows you the exact math, how they got to their new letter, just like this. And also, you can also change the alphabet here, so you can also include numbers. And I also want to kind of go over what rot 13 is. So it's nothing much different. It just means that the key is like locked to 13. The key is just 13. The reason why it's called it's just a pretty common key that people used during for the Caesar cipher because if you apply the Caesar cipher with a shift key of 13, if you apply it twice, you'll land back at your original message because our alphabet has 26 letters. So I can kind of show you how that works. Like right here, we have our message, I love soccer. If I copy this and then now put it here, see, we just come right back to I love soccer. Like that's literally that's all it is. And now we can also decrypt our message. So let's say I just go back here and let's change this now and say, again, I can just say, I love sports. Okay. And this is our new encoded message. I can copy it, click decrypt. And now, instead of this, copy and paste your ciphertext, and it just does the reverse math and it brings us right back here. So if you want, I'm going to put this in the chat. I can give you guys a couple minutes to just play around with it, just kind of understand how the math works and just how the cipher works in general. So I can give you guys like around 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, hopefully that was enough time. If it wasn't, I'll always I'm gonna put this link. I sent like an email after the last webinar, of all the links that I went over, so I can do that again. And this is also just on my website. So yeah. Okay, so now you guys are gonna have an opportunity to do this yourself. So your guys' objective is to try and encode the following plain text. I love learning. And don't worry too much about the capitals. It's mainly just getting the hang of doing the shift yourself. So in this case, your key is 6. So I'll give you a hint. That just means your alphabet is shifting forward 6 places. So we looked at shifting at 2, shifting at 4, and so now we're going to do 6. And don't worry about use the standard A to Z alphabet, like don't include numbers or anything. And I'll give you guys like 3-ish minutes to do it. If anybody's correctly able to do it in the chat, it's very impressive, and I'll give them a nice shout out. So you can just come back at like 5:36. And you can also use the website, want to check your answer if you need some help. So yeah, it's actually pretty fun though, in my opinion, to do yourself. Oh, okay, somebody already did it. Okay, let's like wait though for everybody else to kind of try and do it themselves. Okay, I think I was gonna give it one more time, but I think for the most part everybody did it really fast. So very good job, Shrihan, Piyu, Manasvi, Aradhya, and Isha. Very, very good job. You guys all got it correctly. So that was the answer. And yeah, so again, just plain gibberish. And we can go ahead and we can try and put this in to kind of see the process for anybody who didn't get it. Oh, sorry, this is decrypting. And the key was 6. Okay. Okay, so there you go. This is the process. So this is our new alphabet. Everything gets shifted 6 letters to the right. I becomes O, love, Rubik, and then whatever this means. And yeah, and so I kind of want to explain this if you guys didn't know what mod is. I think most people do, but it just stands for modulus. It's like remainder, like 5 mod 2 would be 1, because when you divide 5 divided by 2, you get remainder 1. So that's literally all, that's how it works. And also, one thing to note is that when you're encrypting, you take the original position and you're adding the key because we're moving forward 6 places, right? So you're going to add the key. And when you're decrypting, again, you just do the reverse math. So now you're just going to be subtracting 6. That's like the only difference. So yeah, hopefully that made sense. Okay, and we're going to move on. So now we're going to move on to our recap. The first thing that we learned today is what is cryptography and how is it important in today's society? Again, cryptography is the process of converting plain text to a ciphertext using a cipher. which is important to protect confidential information. And second, how does decryption and encryption work? Decryption or encryption is a process of turning plain text to ciphertext, and there are two types, symmetric and asymmetric key encryption. And decryption is the very opposite. It just goes from ciphertext to plain text. And lastly, we learned about the Caesar cipher. It's one of the oldest symmetric ciphers, and the reason why I say symmetric is because, like, let's say when you're doing the shifting forward by a certain number, let's say you're at the very last letter Z, it just goes right back to the beginning. It's like one big loop. And also, like what I showed you with rot 13, how if you do if you do it like twice, you get back at your same answer. That's why it's called a symmetric cipher. And it works by shifting the alphabet a certain number of characters to create a whole new alphabet, but it is pretty easy to crack. Now, before you guys leave, there is like an attendance form that I kind of want you guys to fill out just because I wanted to give you guys like some digital certificates for just coming and joining and completing these series. So I'll give that in a second. But for that, if anybody has any questions, you guys can go ahead and ask now. If not, um, you guys can put in the chat what was your best or favorite thing that you learned about today? Okay, perfect. And yeah, I'm gonna send the attendance form. It's if you were there at the last session, it's the same thing as the feedback form. Again, it's like less than 2, 3 minutes. It's just so I can have some feedback on what you enjoyed from today, what can be improved, and like how I can make the very last webinar as best as possible. So I'll send that now. Yeah, these are all great things, guys. Thank you. And yeah, thank you guys all so much for coming. I'm very grateful, and I hope you guys learned something new. And I'll provide all of these slides after all of the webinars are finished. And make sure to come back next week, same time, for our last and final webinar, which is Cyber Threats and the Future of Cyber and Careers. And you guys can also receive your digital certificate as you become. So yeah, thank you all so much, and I hope you guys have a great day.